Squid Game has come to an end. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I've got my review of Squid Game Season 3. All 6 episodes are now streaming on Netflix. This marks the end of an era, the end of this 3-season show, and I've got my honest thoughts now. I spent a lot of the day binge watching this, so I've watched about 6 hours of Squid Game today. Actually more if you count the end of my rewatch of Season 2. I've been on a Squid Game rewatch leading right into this, so I'm Squid Gamed out in a good way. Before I give you my honest thoughts on this final season with no spoilers, hit that like button, subscribe to that notification bell, and comment your thoughts on Squid Game Season 3 down below. The question I'll ask: did they stick the landing? It's going to be a common question that I ask multiple times throughout this video, and you'll find out my thoughts momentarily. But when it comes to Squid Game, it's a show that I watched, of course, when it first came out. I was on the Season 1 hype train, just like everyone else, had to see what all the fuss was about. Quite liked the show when it came out. Then we waited over 3 years to get Season 2. I watched that when it came out. I have a review that I'll link up above. And then I rewatched Season 1 and 2 this past week, leading up to this final season of Squid Game. And I've got lots to say about this season. Starting with some of the major pros, I really appreciate how this season picks up immediately where we left off with Season 2. In fact, this season is basically just Volume 2 of Season 2. I read, and I've heard the creator say that they had like one long season, Netflix just wanted to split it up. That totally makes sense in retrospect, because having seen all 13 episodes of Season 2 and 3 combined, it is just 2A, 2B. And that's kind of a pro and con. I mean, on the one hand, they're 2 seasons, but if we're going the con route, it's like neither season has its own distinct identity. They are just 2 parts making one larger season, and that's very, very evident. So it's not even like I'm addressing a 3rd season of Squid Game. I just view it as the second half, like 2A, 2B, or Volume 1, Volume 2, Part 1, Part 2. That's all this is. I think it's just important to view this through that mindset, not critiquing it as its own distinct season of television, because frankly, it's not that. It's not like there's, a couple episodes to get the ball rolling, introduce a new plot. It is directly continuing where we left off, which I do appreciate, honestly. I'm gonna come right out and say it. This is the most f***ed up season of the 3 in terms of putting characters in very dark spots and having them in these emotionally intense situations where they have to make really just gut-wrenching decisions in the moment. Like, there are some of the saddest deaths in the entire show in this final season. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's the final season of Squid Game, a show that has a reputation for killing people in these games. But this time around, you really felt like you knew a lot of these characters, and so inevitably, when some of them, I won't say who, end up biting the dust, you're like, man, I expected carnage, but I didn't expect characters to go out like that. And so it really makes you almost gasp when you're watching, like, damn, that was almost heartless, or wow, that was a cold move by that character, didn't see that coming. And so in a way, the season subverts expectations with how characters are offed, because again, with the premise of the show, you guys know, even if you haven't watched as of watching this review, bodies are gonna drop. It's Squid Game. And speaking of the actual games themselves, each season has its new set of games that these contestants play, and here, I'd argue they're some of the most brutal games we've gotten. There's one in particular that spans the entirety of an episode, and I won't say too much, but it involves hide and seek. That episode, to me, is the standout episode of the season, and it contains some of the most heartbreaking moments, but also some of the most intense, not only in this season, but of the entire show. And I just appreciated how it was a new format. It almost took elements from something like The Hunger Games, where there's this barbaric mindset that's sort of thrown into characters where they'll do whatever it takes to survive. It's directly pitting humans against each other, and I feel like that's, a theme throughout all of Squid Game, is the dark places of humanity and what's morally right versus morally wrong. Like, does society value money more than actual human life? It's very present throughout Squid Game, and that's the case with this season as well. But that one episode I'm referencing, the 2nd episode of Season 3, reminds me a lot of the 6th episode of Season 1, with certain character moments and just the devastation that you're going to experience as you're watching characters really reach the end of their life, but also be hit with these brutal moments of realization that hurt. It's really the only way I can describe it. In fact, throughout all 6 episodes, this season really has some moving, emotional moments that hit right in the feels. And I think a lot of that is just because we've spent 3 seasons with these characters, and specifically the new characters who were introduced in Season 2 and then are back in season 3, which is just part 2. You've really grown with them, and I think they do a great job of fleshing a bunch of them out. And in those first 2 episodes of season 2, where we're not in the games yet, you really see everyone's home life, right? What's it like outside the games? There's a character who's from North Korea who ends up being one of the soldiers, the pink soldiers as I call them. They are very humanized throughout. You get a bunch of different perspectives in the season that aren't present in season 1 and 2, as you've got, of course, Ji-hun, the front man, but there's also a lot going on outside the games in this season with Junho trying to find the island. So the main plot's not just, oh, we're at the games the entire time. There's a lot more going on. As this is the final season, it's got to lead towards tying a bow on the whole show as we know it. I think it does a good job for the most part with that. And I gotta mention the score. Ooh, I love a good score. It enhances those emotional moments I was referring to, and it just elevates like the overall tension. There's a lot of emphasis in this season specifically on voting after each game. And there's even a line I think that a character says, I won't say who, where they're like, the voting was almost as fun to watch as the games themselves. And I was like, damn, that's crazy, but you're not wrong. I know it's weird as an audience member to have that viewpoint, but like the way the strategizing by these players and the math of it all coming into play, like, oh, how many people do we need to vote to keep playing? How much would our share of the big pot of money be? It's sick, really. It shows this twisted side of humanity, this greed that can consume oneself, and I thought they just handled it all so well. In fact, for this season being 6 episodes, I think the longest episode is like 1 hour and 6 minutes, but it's really well paced. I watched it all essentially in one sitting over the course of roughly 6 hours, and there wasn't really a moment where I was like, oh, this is dragging. I mean, it's 6 episodes. It's the conclusion, it's the payoff of everything that was set up in season 2. Season 2 was more of, like I said, the setup, the part 1. This is the back half of that. It's the conclusion, the climax of Squid Game as we know it. I think this one's going to be a bit more rewatchable just because it doesn't really have to lay the foundation for itself. It's a direct continuation, whereas with season 2, you got to do some heavy lifting early on, establishing new characters, introducing the new games. Like, none of that has to be done in this season, and so a lot of the heavy lifting, again, was done in season 2. So this gets to reap the benefits of what season 2 had to do early on, which could be a bit slower. And I'll say this, you go into a final season of a TV show, no matter what it is, no matter how long it's been running, and you want them to stick the landing, and you want it to be satisfying. And I would say, for the most part, I'm pretty satisfied with how Squid Game stuck the landing. I wouldn't say they hit a grand slam, and it's not one of the best series finales of all time. There's a few things that I'm still on the fence about, but I think for the most part, I can safely say they did a good job at landing the plane. It might have been a little bumpy at times in that finale, but I think for the most part, they landed the plane here, and I'll look back years from now and say, yeah, I think Squid Game did it well. One reason being is there's reports out there, this is no surprise, that they're not done with the Squid Game universe. And there's one moment in this finale where I was like, I see the vision. I think I like where we're headed with this universe, and I won't be surprised if by the end of this year, we get this official confirmation of the next project in the Squid Game universe. I actually, in the finale, sat up near the end. There's a moment that I will not reveal that got me pretty good. I was like, damn, is that who I think it is? Didn't expect to see that person here. Whoa, are we doing something? What? Whoa, what? I don't want to say too much. I'm sure you've probably seen it as of watching, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I was like, I kind of like the direction we're headed, and I think some of my grievances with this season, as I transition to the cons, are I feel like certain big picture ideas were left a bit too open, and we didn't get some concrete answers that I was hoping for since season 1, so I felt kind of robbed of that in the moment. But if I'm looking ahead, I think this universe, like this 3-season show is only the beginning of something special, and so I believe over time we're gonna get more answers. And so I have to be patient in a sense. I still think they tied a bow on most storylines here, but selfishly maybe I wanted more concrete answers, specifically with the brotherhood relationship between Inho and Junho. I wanted a bit more out of that. I felt that certain moments of conclusion between them were somewhat underwhelming, I won't say what, and I wasn't fully on board with certain characters' fates initially, but I do believe they're growing on me ever so slightly, and maybe make sense now that I think about it. I'm being vague intentionally, I don't want to reveal character deaths, but it goes without saying, people are gonna die at Squid Game. But I do want to talk about some of my cons. It's nothing crazy, but one point I want to make, and I don't remember if I made this in my Season 2 review or not, but I probably should have if I didn't. In both Season 2 and Season 3, there are various reveals made but the audience is like 20 miles ahead of the characters themselves. Like, we know information that the characters don't. And so when reveals end up happening in the show, and these characters who are sort of in the dark get this information thrown onto them, and they have that light bulb moment, it's like, yeah, they're caught up to us now. And so that could just get a little frustrating, where as an audience member, you're sitting there and going, man, I know that I know this because the show directly showed it to me, but how are you so slow? Like, how are you not picking up on this? And it gets a little bit frustrating and does lessen some of those big shock factor reveal moments where maybe the creator of the show is like, oh, this is gonna really get them good, but it just doesn't hit the same. Even in, like, I think it's the penultimate or the finale, there's one of those moments of revelation for other characters that, again, we the audience have known forever, and I was just like, this isn't that big of a deal because we've just known this forever now. And again, I don't want to spoil anything because I almost need to do a spoiler review. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments down below. There is a specific character, or characters, I won't say, I'm gonna leave it up to the imagination, that I believe they were taken out of the season a little too early. And so when you do that and commit to that choice, once the numbers start to dwindle, right, and bodies continue to drop, I felt as though the characters remaining as you get near the end of the season are just a little less interesting, which hurts, I think, the intensity. And when the stakes are at their highest, I might have cared about the characters the least, in a sense, except for a few. But I mean, it makes you wonder what could have been. But at the same time, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you want a show to have stakes throughout the entire season, not just save everyone for the finale. So it balances that out well, I guess, but in the moment I was like, man, I would have liked to have seen such and such here instead of here. The vagueness continues on purpose to avoid spoilers, but I do believe if you've seen the season, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Minor thing, and I want to know what you guys think down below as well. If I say Twilight, you might be like, what? Why is he saying Twilight? We're taking it one step further here. CGI. Are you picking up what I'm putting down if I just throw that out there? You have to have seen the Twilight movies and understand what I mean. There's a character in this show, this season. I was a bit taken aback by a creative choice. That's all I'm gonna say. The face of a character, it was a choice for sure. It wasn't like the most offensively jarring thing I've ever seen, but I was kind of like, huh, okay. There are definitely humans that could have done that, but all right, interesting. And if you haven't figured out what I'm talking about by now, I just feel like I have to come out and say it. Mild spoilers, but you kind of knew this if you've seen the trailers. Player 222 has her baby in this season, and the entire time it's like a CGI baby. So the face kind of moves a little funky, and I'm like, couldn't they have just gotten a real human baby to do this? I don't know, call me crazy, but it was a bit strange. And every time it cut to that character being held by someone, or just anytime they were on screen, it was a bit jarring, I will admit. Not something that like lessens the score by any means. I just don't understand. But when we reach that finale, and you know, the final 30 or so minutes play out, and the credits end up rolling on that bad boy, I'd say I was satisfied, you know? It's not the best season. I look back at this show and I go, it's hard to top season 1. I feel that way about a lot of shows, though, especially ones that are designed to be miniseries initially, like Squid Game. It had a great season 1 that had a definitive ending, but we got 2 more seasons. Am I mad about it? Not at all. I think they expanded this world in a nice way. They even took some characters in a direction I never would have imagined or envisioned, but I was here for it by the time the credits rolled. And like I mentioned, this is not the end of this universe. There's more stories to be told, maybe in other countries, with big name A-list actors potentially, and big name talent involved. Bring it on. But all in all, Squid Game Season 3 worked for me when I view it as a part 2. In fact, moving forward, I'm rarely even gonna refer to Squid Game Season 3 as Season 3. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, watch Season 2 Part 1 and then watch Season 2 Part 2, because Season 2 of Squid Game is 13 episodes. It's 7 in Season 2 and 3 in Season 6. That's the second season. The first season exists. It's 9 episodes. There are 2 seasons of Squid Game. And so to talk about this as its own season feels weird. I don't understand the decision to not just label it Volume 1 and Volume 2. I guess people get really up in arms and offended about that nowadays. I guess people are anti-parts or volumes, so I get why they did it, but this is not its own season of TV. That's not me saying, damn this show. That's me going, that's a fact, Jack. But all in all, I think this show ends in a really good spot. It sets up this universe for more stories to be told with other characters, maybe even around the globe. And regarding the main narrative with Ji-hun, with Jun-ho, In-ho, it wraps all that up nicely. There's definitive endings for characters, some a bit more ambiguous than others, but the main concept, the main idea of this show does come to a close Albeit, you could argue it's maybe rushed or some questions are left unanswered. You could argue that in the comments down below, but I think I'm satisfied, and I need to sleep on it and think on this over time. Time, with all movies and shows, really is the tell-all, right? 10 years from now, I could look back and say, oh, wow, that was really rushed, or oh, that was perfect. That's just the beauty of movies and shows, is will they stand the test of time? And I think as we expand this universe, Squid Game Season 3 will only be strengthened by the projects that come in the future. But as of right now, as of the day this drops, as of watching it, I think they stuck the landing in Squid Game Season 3. While not the best of the three, is still a very good season of TV. But that's just my honest review of Squid Game Season 3, or dare I say, Squid Game Season 2 Volume 2. Let me know your thoughts on this season down below and hit that like button. Do you want to see a spoiler video? I might be doing that, so let me know. I'm probably going to rank the seasons. I'm probably going to do a character tier list, so be on the lookout for more Squid Game content coming sometime this weekend, heading into next week as well. I'll be talking about it for about a week or so be on the lookout for all that. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.